All right, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 2000 Saturn SL. Up front is a 1.9 liter inline 4 and down below is a 5-speed manual transmission. Now I'm super excited to be driving this here SL for really one reason and one solid reason only, and that is the fact that I've never ever driven a Saturn product. That's right. Of my over 540 some reviews, or whatever number this is, I've never ever driven a Saturn. So today, right now, as of just a few moments ago, that is no longer the case. And I'm gonna have a lot of thoughts about Saturn as a company, so stick around for my TED Talk at the end. Let's get back to that 1.9 liter inline 4. I've been putting the horsepower and torque up on the screen. It's nothing really too interesting, cool, or fast. Now this is the single overhead cam engine. This is the Saturn SL1. The SL2 also got a 1.9 liter, but it was a dual overhead cam and it made more horsepower and came with more features. This is the SL1, so it does not have those. But if you really want a Saturn and you want a little bit more pep in its step from the factory, you can search out an SL2. It's kind of fun to drive. Now this car does have 142,000 miles on it. It's been around the block a couple of times. It's not the happiest camper in the world, but it actually is kind of fun to row through the gears and you're in this little lightweight car. This feels like an old Civic or something of the sort. Is this gonna throw down crazy times on the toge? Absolutely not. That's not what the Saturn was designed to do. It's actually not a bad driving experience. Last but not least, of course, the SL is front wheel drive. So let's talk about the interior. We don't have a whole lot to go through in here, but we still got to talk about it. In front of me, I have all analog gauges. On the far left is my fuel. Then I have my speedometer. Then I have my tachometer and coolant temperature off to the right. The steering wheel has nothing but an airbag and a horn on it, to be expected. And to the left of me, I just have my gauge dimmer switch. On the door, I have crank windows and manual mirrors. However, that does leave a fair amount of room for my left knee, which cannot be said in a lot of these older economy cars. Moving into the center, 2 climate control vents, a radio that is actually distinguished as a Saturn radio. Now, this is the first notion that I start to get of where this isn't just a rebadged Chevy. Of course, Saturn was owned by GM, and it shares a lot of parts, but not all of them. It's not just a simple name change and that's it. And I sort of like that, and that's noticeable with the radio. Down below the radio, I do have my climate controls. Again, nothing too crazy. The fan speeds on a actual dial, which is interesting. And then down below, I have a cup holder and 12-volt outlet. So we'll do a big friggin' bottle test for the first time ever in a Saturn, and it fails in the front, but the rear center console cup holder actually passes. It has a very tall brim, and while the bottle doesn't sit exactly at the bottom, it does fit in, which is great. Getting back to the rest of the center console, however, I do have, of course, my shifter. Looks super, super cheap, feels cheap, and the bushings in it feel pretty terrible. There's a lot of guesswork that goes into my gear changes when driving. I'm pretty sure it's in gear, but I'm not totally satisfied with the feeling. And then to round out the center console, I have a coin holder and then some more little cubbies at the very bottom. Now the seats are decently comfortable, very, very dated, of course, tan cloth seats, very cheap, very inexpensive, but they do the job. But speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a back seat review. So we're in the back of the 2000 Saturn SL. A couple of things. It feels very 90s in here. This is a 90s car, first of all. But also, the seats aren't terrible. Headroom, my head's hitting the ceiling a little bit. Knee room is actually pretty good. And of course, I have crank windows back here. I don't get a center console or anything like that. Very, very basic back seats. However, this will fit your friends to go to Dairy Queen. This will fit all your stuff to move into college for the first time, which was kind of the original point of these Saturn vehicles. They weren't ever really that expensive, and they were just kind of here for a good time and not a long time, if that makes sense. Now we got to talk about the looks. And I think the SL actually kind of looks kind of neat. I don't know, it looks dated, it looks fun, and just the fact that you don't see Saturns anymore just brings this little spark, a little bit of joy to it. They're never gonna make another Saturn unless they bring it back as an EV, which we'll get into later. But there's no more of these in production. They're not being made anymore. And so seeing a Saturn always sparks just a little bit of joy in me. Now let's talk about what you probably noticed with that walk around, which was the cracked fender with air horns sticking out, which is very common. Well, not the air horns, but the cracked fender. That's because Saturn emphasized the fact that they made their body panels out of plastic. This was actually a marketing strategy used by Saturn.
Before buying her Saturn coupe, Diane Vincente of Providence, Rhode Island chose not to kick the tires. She did, however, check out the doors.
They marketed it as the undentable body panels. No dents, no rust, which is true. If you see an old Saturn like this, yeah, sure, the paint has seen better days, but look, no dents, no rust. It's true. However, while plastic doesn't dent or rust, it certainly does crack. And you'll see Saturn SLs or Saturn SCs with cracked and or shattered doors, shattered fenders. By moving to plastic, Saturn introduced a whole new issue, which was spiderweb cracks. So a previous owner stuck some air horns in that cracked fender because, you know, why not? But now with all of that being said, cracked fender and all, now I want to talk about Saturn. Boy, have I been waiting for this to come. Well, first of all, I have an interesting relationship with Saturns. And the fact that last year I actually explored an abandoned Saturn dealer. And a very prominent magazine and online source, The Drive, actually wrote an article about my video, which was super fascinating. But through that video, the footage that you're seeing now in the article, a lot of people commented on that video and they said, I remember picking up a Saturn. I remember buying a Saturn and it was really truly an interesting experience. They were so kind, so different, so unique. They made it seem like it was more than just buying a car, which was emphasized by their front little viewing circle of sorts. They would park your new car when you came to pick it up and it had the lights shining on it and all of the things on the door, and it was just this very inviting, very much the girl next door of car manufacturers. No, it's not the prettiest or highest tech thing in the world, but you fall in love with it just because it is what it is. But that's the thing. I want to read the intro of the Saturn SL owner's manual, which luckily the owner kept, which is fantastic. I want to read you an excerpt, so hear me out here. There are a few words we've been waiting to say to you. Simply, welcome to Saturn. We began as something of an upstart company, an experiment that only we truly believed in. Today, after almost 10 years of making cars, there are well over 1.7 million Saturn owners on the road. Guess the rest of the world is starting to believe in us too. If you're like most people, you chose to buy a Saturn partly because you wanted a car that's well engineered, easily serviced, and a lot of fun to drive. And partly because you liked the Saturn people you met while you were shopping. Chances are, they were a little more straightforward than some others you've encountered. Beyond all of the smart ideas built into our cars, this is the real Saturn difference. Its willingness to do things right, so that owning a Saturn feels more like a friendship and less like a business transaction. The longer you drive your car, the more we hope you'll come to appreciate that for us. It's not just a question on how well your car performs day to day, but also how we perform as its maker. So if it ever crossed your mind that our commitment might diminish over time, now that you've written your check and driven home, think again. If anything, now is when the real stuff begins. We want to thank you for buying one of our cars, and we'll do our best to make owning this Saturn as pleasurable to you as building it was to us, the Saturn team. Never mind the fact that they were ended 8 years later, and actually my friend works at a dealership that used to be a Saturn dealership, and they have people come in all the time saying, hey, where do I get my Saturn service now? And they have to say, I don't know, take it somewhere else. So, you know, lying and such. Saturn was so cool and unique. GM also knew that it was cool and unique. I've been obsessed with this movie for years and years and years, but I actually recently rewatched it. It's a film called Who Killed the Electric Car? And if you're unaware, back in the late 90s, GM made a fully electric car that would go over 100 miles per charge, and they leased it out to celebrities. It was called the EV1. And their plan was to sell it under the Saturn name. It was going to be the Saturn EV1. But throughout the film, you find out that big oil lobbies and car manufacturers and apparently not enough demand actually killed the electric car and killed the EV1. But it was gonna be a Saturn. That car was gonna be a Saturn. Something unique and so different and so cool. This car is unique. It's different. It's unlike the other GM slob vehicles that I've driven in the past. Saturn was this bright, shining light of youth and fun and mobility that in 2008 wasn't deemed worthy enough to keep around. And so during the financial crisis of 2008, when the government bailed out GM, they said, hey, we'll bail you out, but you gotta get rid of half of your manufacturers. And so they said, adios Hummer, adios Pontiac, adios Saab, and adios Saturn. These cars are really truly something special. They don't look it, but they are. Saturn could have been such a cool brand if it was just given a few more years to live. I really enjoy this Saturn SL. I really do. But even more than that, I wish that I could jump realities or go to a parallel universe where Saturn wasn't killed prematurely and they were allowed to live. I can only imagine the kind of technology they'd have now. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Brighton for letting me take out his Saturn SL. He said it's nothing special, but I really think that this is quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. So huge thank you to him for letting me live my Saturn dreams. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.